Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Compassion and Courage, Conversations in Healthcare. I'm your host, Marcus Engel. This is the podcast where I teach compassionate communication, provide perspective, and inspire resilience. I want to thank everyone who has subscribed or written a review or rated or shared the information about the podcast over the last couple of months. Doing this for you is why we do this. So thank you all so much for spreading the word. And please remember, if you have not already, to hit the subscribe button. That is really what helps us to be able to continue to know that we're making an impact on our listeners. Today, I am honored to have a friend of mine in the virtual studio with me here. This gentleman's name is Keith Kirkland. I've known Keith for about close to 10 years now that I think about it. And that seems crazy, doesn't it, man?
It does.
It does. So Keith is, I believe you are my first guest on the podcast that is not a clinical professional nor someone who specifically works in healthcare. So I don't know if that makes you feel like you've got some big shoes to fill or what, but
yeah, makes me feel super special. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So Keith, I'd like to always begin, my message is about presence. My message is always about presence, and it's about communication and healthcare. So I am here today in my home studio in Orlando. Where is here for you today, Keith?
Yeah, I'm based out of Brooklyn right now in the Kensington area, right below Prospect Park.
Excellent. And that's where I first met you, was in New York several years ago. Mm-hmm. So let's share a little bit about your background and who you are as a person and why on this podcast now. So you're a designer, and I know that because a lot of my people, a lot of healthcare folks, don't know the world of design very well. Can you give just a thumbnail sketch of what design is and how it really benefits the lives of, everybody?
Yeah, super happy to. So design is the process of creating a product, but I think more in depth, it's the process of responding to user needs for what a product entails. And so as designers, we spend a lot of time making very beautiful drawings. That is a big part of our job, but we spend just as much time talking to customers, getting a sense of how what we built has impacted them so far, and iterating on that process so that we get to a result that ultimately the customer really deeply finds functionally valuable and, ideally delightful at the same time.
And so how did you come into this world of design? I assume an artistic background and a lean towards aesthetics and design?
Yeah, so I walked into the very crooked door. So I started out, when I was a kid, I was always really, really good at art. Like in the first grade, I was drawing Bart Simpsons for chocolate milks. And, I got voted like most artistic in every yearbook from elementary school to high school, from every school that I'd ever gone to. The thing, when I was a kid, I kind of left art in the realm of hobby. It felt more like this is something that I do for fun, but this isn't going to be the thing I make a living off of. And I was really, really strong in math and science. So I went originally and studied engineering, mechanical engineering. I graduated, worked for about 6 months and realized that it wasn't necessarily the space that I wanted to be in. And when I did some rethinking, I realized that I had all this artistic talent that I wasn't really using. And so when I combined the functionality and the utilitarianness of engineering with art, I immediately came to fashion. And so I got my second degree in handbag and shoe design, which is what brought me to New York. I went to the Fashion Institute of Technology and studied there. I worked in the industry for about 2 years in the handbag space, like Calvin Klein, Coach, and Le Sportsac. And ultimately, I left the fashion industry. I wanted to see if there was a more applicable way to use design to help forward humanity. And so I went and got a master's degree in industrial design from Pratt in Brooklyn. Spent some time studying at Keio University in Tokyo and the Royal College of Art and Imperial College in London as part of that program. And then I came back really dying actually to get back into fashion. Like I missed it so much, but I wanted to find a way that fashion would resonate more deeply with me. And for me, that came in the space of around wearable technology. So
that's a great place to pick this up. So wearable technology is where our paths first intersected. And can you share with the listenership a little bit about where this idea came from and how wearables were, how you went from, I guess, clothing to wearables is still wearable, but technology versus handbag, seemingly a drastic shift of lanes.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, like it was pretty funny because while I was doing my thesis work, I spent my time in Japan and London exposed me to a lot of technology, and so I was really interested in like, wow, what happens when this technology is close to our bodies? And wearable tech was kind of, you know, still kind of like a brand new space at the time, and so there weren't necessarily so many references to draw from personally. So I kind of dug in and really. I was studying, or I was interested in exploring design at the intersection of fashion and movement. And so I studied martial arts for a good portion of my life, and I had all these injuries from movement-related sports, you know, like bad knee from running, bad back from flipping. And I wanted to know if there's a way to learn movement in a healthier way so I didn't injure myself. And so my thesis was basically me trying to figure out if there was a way to download Kung Fu, and if I could build a suit that would teach you Kung Fu using only vibration without the need for a person to be present and part of the training. So that was like my initial walkway into this space.
So you're creating a wearable technology suit that will potentially teach you Kung Fu simply by vibrating specific parts of the suit on your body.
Exactly. I just saw The Matrix like way too many times and was like, why can't you download Kung Fu? And I was like, wait, I think you can download Kung Fu. And when I realized all the technology was there, I was like, let's give this a shot. So
did it work?
No. So, so you know, like one of the biggest things is that like to put all the technology together was like a really huge project. And so what I started to do was like, okay, how can I simplify this, and can I create like an MVP so I can start to build this complex piece of technology later? So I built like an initial thing that would measure the speed of your punch if you're like practicing martial arts, and give you haptic feedback based off of the strength of your punch. It's basically like, you know, the carnival hammer at the, you know, the hammer and the carnival thing. You hit the thing and the light goes up, and how far you hit it goes up. It depends on how strong it is. It was like an electronic version of that with haptics. So that piece did work. But I realized that all the pieces needed to get put together was a complex problem. And so I actually, when I graduated, I set my goal on, you know, creating a company to solve that complex problem. And then along the way, I met my co-founders, Kevin and Yang. And Kevin actually, we started talking. Kevin and Yang have both done some work in haptics, and they were super interested in starting a haptics company. They reached out to me because I had spent my whole thesis working in the haptic space. Haptic means of or relating to the sense of touch, for anyone who doesn't know. And so we were like, okay, why don't we join forces and come together? And when we were thinking about our first product, we ran past the idea of the Kung Fu suit, but it was really complex. And we felt that we could build something that was a bit more simple and a bit more valuable. And actually, Kevin, he, you know, is an industrial designer as well. He's my co-founder. He was giving a class around to some designer friends to have them talk around the disabilities community, accessibility, and what that means for design. And he invited you to actually give that talk. And when you came to the school talking about the challenges that you had just finding your way to campus, with, you know, we have a big campus park, essentially. It's pretty confusing. Even if you do know, if you can see and you do know where the buildings are, it's still pretty hard to get around. And so he was deeply inspired by the challenges that you were having. And he kind of came to us and was like, I met this guy named Marcus, and I think that we could use haptics around the use case for navigation. And that was kind of where everything kind of coalesced. For me personally, it became navigation was just a simpler form of movement than Kung Fu. instead of like 3-dimensional space and accuracy, we only have to worry about 2-dimensional space. Instead of millimeter, resolution, GPS is 5 meters at best, and the entire language would be really simple. It would go straight, turn left, turn right, wrong way, you've arrived. And so we felt like if we could figure out a way of communicating navigation information intuitively through touch, we can transform that into other fields and spaces, including downloading Kung Fu suits.
So let me try to encapsulate this for people who are not as familiar with the scientific technology here. Let me break this down for a layman like myself. When I first was introduced to you and Kevin and Yang, we stood in a park, and you guys gave me a rather simple wrist device that I put on my arm. And as I rotated in a 365 degree around in a circle, that device would send different vibrational patterns to my wrist that for me, it was really, really easy to pick up on whenever it was a very hard haptic hit, let's say that, or almost like a punch on the wrist. I knew that I was going the wrong way. And I'm sure that those things have been adjusted since we first stood in that park.
Yeah.
But for all of those who are wondering, how does this have real world application? It certainly would for people like me. But can we talk about how haptics can benefit the general public?
Yeah. And so when we started with this idea of navigation, we knew about your use case, and we knew that was a very powerful use case. But what we really saw is an opportunity to like get people out of their phones and back into the real world. Like I went to South by Southwest in Austin, Texas a few years ago, and I spent more time looking at my mapping application than I did Austin. And in a world where cars can basically drive and park themselves, is the best way that we figured out for humans to get from one place to another, really constantly staring at a screen or having this person annoyingly talking to your ear, telling you to turn left every 30 feet, right? So we saw a better opportunity to just improve the navigation experience by offloading that information from vision and audition and putting it directly into the surface of your skin using vibration.
And so who's going to benefit besides typical blind people working to help them navigate?
Yeah.
How would this have helped you at South by Southwest?
Yeah. So like, for example, like I spent the summer in Europe, mainly in Romania and Sweden, working on some partnerships with blind organizations there. And in Romania in particular, I don't know Romanian. I also have a really hard time navigating these very complex neighborhood-like streets. And so when I'm in Romania, I just use my Wayband app to navigate, and I don't need to be able to read the street signs. But more importantly, I was going to a friend's house, and I remember, because I feel like this was kind of like the ultimate experience of the Wayband product. It was like I was walking to a friend's house. I had no idea where my friend's house was. And after about 10 minutes, I start like daydreaming. Like I was thinking about some business plans and, some strategy stuff. And then about 10 minutes in, I realized that I don't know where I'm going and I'm not paying attention. And I kind of like get a slight panic for a second, and I grab my Wayband device, and I like wave it to the left. I wave my hand to the right. I feel the vibrations on both sides, and I was like, wow, I'm going the exact right way. And then I just went back into my daydream, and so the thing that Wayband gives you is like, it gives people the experience to navigate to a place that they've never been to, like they've been there 1,000 times before. That confidence, that security. And when you're going to a place that you've never been before, you're in a country that you can't speak the language or you don't know words, or more importantly, what your eyes are doing is just more important for them to pay attention to what it is that you're doing, like cycling, running, snowboarding, skiing. All these things require all of your visual and, audio attention. But we require you to look at a map, and we take you out of that presence. And so by offloading that and putting it in a different channel, we free the ears and free the eyes so that a person has a space to really be present in their journey. And I think that is something that is the real value proposition of the Wayband for the general populations.
Yes, for the general population, and I'll echo what you said, because as I've been able to work with some of the prototypes, taking a walk down a street in Brooklyn or through a park in New York, I felt like I could rely on the band, and that let me pay a lot more attention to the things that were going on around me. I remember the day that I was in the park, there was somebody playing guitar off to the side, and there were children running around over here screaming. There was, it's in Brooklyn, so you're hearing car traffic, you're hearing sirens. I'm sure there's some amplifiers out there too.
Yeah.
And yet it gave me the ability to continue on walking through that park, but it also gave me the ability, because I'm relying on that haptic device on my wrist, to be able to pay better attention to these kids over here playing on the side, or what song the guitar player is playing. Typically, for someone with a visual impairment, you are so focused on the environment that is right around you and where you're going that you often have to block out some of those sounds around you. So this gave me the ability to actually listen in my environment a little bit more. And that's a pretty cool thing. So your company is called WearWorks. The
Yes.
device is called the Wayband. And I've been fortunate enough to help you gentlemen for the last several years with some whatever knowledge that I can bring to the table. But you have had some super cool successes with this device already. Can you share some of those?
Yeah. So, I think that, our biggest success to date was definitely back in 2017 when we helped Simon Wheatcroft, who was a blind marathon runner, complete 15 miles of the New York City Marathon without sighted assistance. So it had never been done before, and we were navigating him using only touch. And so we kind of broke two precedents. Like, we got a person who was blind or visually impaired, like, through a good portion of the marathon without that need of relying on a sighted runner. And so just for the general population, the way people who are blind or visually impaired partake in marathons is that they often are tethered by the hand or by the arm to another runner. And this means that, the runners have to, it's almost like a marriage in that way, where it's like you need to be in sync, you need to be in lockstep. And usually, this person is a person that you train with constantly. So for a person who is an athlete who was blind, we're working with a few Paralympic athletes. One of our athletes actually down in Mexico, she went to Japan and came back with the world-breaking record for the 1500. And so, we're working with athletes, and a lot of times if they don't have their training partner, they're sick, they're unavailable, they're busy, they can't train. And so we were like, how can we help a person be independent and have the experience of running? And Simon came to us with the idea of wow, this technology is great. If it could help me run a New York City Marathon, I'll do it. And we were like, at the time, we were like, there's no way that we can do that. But we were like, sure, Simon, let's give it a shot, and we'll take our best stab at it, and we'll get as far as we get with it. And
so for 15 miles, Simon ran the New York City Marathon without having to be tethered to another sighted individual or using sighted guide or anything. He was able to do this solo without being touched or guided by another person.
Exactly. So in Simon's case, we had to build two pieces of technology. So one, he was wearing a Wayband, and the Wayband gave him the route information. So it let him know which way he had to go and kept him on track for the marathon. The other piece, of course, for the blind navigation experience is we call it micro scale navigation, but obstacle avoidance. How do you avoid the other runners and the things that are potential hazards in your way? And so for that, we actually built him another piece of technology. On his chest, he wore an ultrasonic distance sensor that gave him haptic feedback back. So he could tell how close, another runner was to him based off of the feeling that he had in front of him. And he had his Wayband guiding him through the marathon. And that's how that two-part solution is how he was able to run without his dog and without his cane. And then we had 3 backup runners stationed in a crescent moon formation behind him just in case anything went wrong. So, safety is important.
When you first told me that this was possible, whenever you first told me about this possibility, I was kind of like you guys. I didn't think that, are you kidding me? Really? You're going to run a marathon, blind guy, no tethering, no guide, just technology. It was an amazing thing for me as a person with a visual disability to witness how that worked and the independence that brings about, which kind of brings us to this whole conversation on this podcast. This is an incredibly compassionate product that you have come up with. And I specifically mean that for people who are blind or visually impaired, but we're also talking real world application for everyone. Mm-hmm. But whenever we start with design, whenever we start with the universal humanity in mind, can you just go off of that for a little bit? What the whole point of design is really to make us more efficient in this world that we have, right? It's really a compassionate lens from which to view the world.
Yeah, agreed. The principles of universal design, like one of the things that we found, and I think that one of the things that have been, and this probably remains true across the industry, is that, when you consider the extreme use cases for your product, you usually end up designing a better product for everyone. And, so by looking at this experience, like we have a mapping application, our map works just like any other map, like Google Maps or Apple Maps or Waze. You type in where you want to go. There isn't much that's different from that part of the experience. But for us, we were reimagining the navigation experiences. Like, what if you could only feel? The sound and vision weren't an option at all. What would the experience of navigation be like from that point of view? And then, of course, we built the map that has the visuals, so if you can see it, you can use them. We have the audio in the background, so if you can hear, you can use it. But the important thing is that we wanted those 2 senses to be optional. And usually in the space that we work in with touch is usually a supplemental, experience to something that is visually or audition based. So by leading in with the touch as the primary part of the experience, we were unknowingly, but also very wittingly, putting ourselves into a space where we had more people have access to the sense of touch than vision and hearing, or both combined. And so we really saw the opportunity to create a product that could potentially improve the lives of not only people who are blind and visually impaired, but really, from a universal design point of view, everyone. And when we talked to the National Federation of the Blind, we had a conversation with them when we built our first prototypes. Like, they gave us some information that we took to heart and has become a deep part of our company philosophy. It's like, don't build a blind device. Build a device that everyone can use that's optimized for the blind experience.
And I think I would concur with that. And I know quite a few other people who are blind or visually impaired that would concur with that. Don't create another specialized device that only we can use. Mm-hmm. Make something new and cool that everyone can use. Mm-hmm. So I love that philosophy. And when we talk about universal design, like we said, it comes back to what the utilitarian idea, the greatest amount of good for the greatest amount of people. And when we design universally, that again comes from the lens of compassion, that all people are an equal part of society, and equitably we just need to make a few accommodations to make sure that society is equally accessible for all. And I, for one, am very glad that you guys are doing this work. So from that lens of compassion, I always ask my guests if there is a story from your own life that you would share that is a story of a time that you were there for someone, or a time that someone was there for you. When I work with my students at Notre Dame on what it means to be present, it always comes back to that idea of human suffering and another person helping to ease that human suffering. Are there any stories from your own past that come to mind whenever I ask you for a story about presence?
Yeah. I think I have a few stories actually. I think one of my favorite ones is it actually involves our company and involves the marathon. And so Simon reached out to us in April and asked us if we could help him run the marathon in November. We said yes, and we began to set out on a pathway to build products. And then we quickly ran out of funding that we had access to, and so we needed to raise some more money in order to complete the work that we needed to do for the marathon. All summer long, we had been talking to investors. They had been super excited about the idea of the marathon. It blew their mind, And then every single one of them told us, wow, this sounds amazing. We'd love to talk to you after the marathon is over and see how it went. And we were like, if we don't get a check, there's going to be no marathon, and at this moment, we were initially going to sneak Simon in, just, hey, give him a Wayband, not tell anybody, and just tell him after he ran it that he ran it. And, the marathon actually found out, and they called us, and it was like, hey, we heard about what you're doing. You need backup runners, but it's cool. And so, we were coming in, and I'm like, wow, we're in this space. Discovery Channel had found out about it. Forbes had found out about it. The Verge had found out about it. The New York Times had found out about it. So now we have 4 camera crews following us around on a weekly basis. And we still have $0 to actually run the marathon with 6 weeks before the marathon is supposed to run. And so I was talking to a really close friend of mine's. We had met in Japan when I was studying there. And we had kept in contact for all these years. And, I talk about WearWorks a lot because, it's all I do. So you're my friend. You hear a lot about WearWorks. And so I was talking to her about WearWorks and my frustration with, we're doing this amazing thing for society, yet we can't get $1. And, but if I was, building, an interconnected juicer, this guy raised 100 million, so I'm looking wow, how does this really work? And I'm like, what are we doing wrong? And I'm having these conversations with her. And she was like, how much money do you think you need? I was like, I don't know. I think we could do it about $50,000. And, 2 days later, she wrote me a check. And wow. A month later, a person who was blind ran a marathon. So it's kind of and in the conversation, I was like, I can't take your money. I know you care about me a lot. You don't want to see my dream die. And she was like, no, I want to invest. I've always wanted to invest in your company, and I want to buy a house, but I feel like you could double my money faster than that. And I was like, I could definitely double your money faster than that. And so all of a sudden it became oh, not only was it just this favor, but I found out that there was this kind of deep history where she wanted to be a part and was looking for an opportunity. And I think one of the things that part taught me was kind of one, you're always pitching because you have no idea who are actually going to be your supporters and your funders. So even when you're sharing stories, it was a reminder that it's always a pitch, even when you're not trying to pitch. And then I think the other part of that was that, you just be as great as you can to everyone, because you have no idea years down the line, who's going to open some random door for you that is perfectly positioned. So I was deeply grateful for that. And of course, as a company, we were all deeply grateful for that, because that event is what put us on the map.
And let's not gloss over that. As a designer, your heart is design. And yet you being in this space of startups and entrepreneurship, you've got to be out there knocking on doors to get angel investors to see the vision in your product. And that's a whole different side of business and recruitment of funds that I think you guys have done very, very well, considering I don't think any of you are business or sales backgrounds. So thank you for overcoming the obstacles of not only getting the technology to work, but also having the courage to go out there and knock on those doors and tell the world about your product.
Yeah, internally, we deeply believe that the skin is really the next frontier of communication. And so from our point of view, it wasn't about a if this is going to happen. It's like when and who, and we wanted that to be now and us. And so we kind of learned all the skills that we needed to learn to make sure that that vision could come true. But thank you so much for that recognition. It's really nice.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will certainly put a link to WearWorks site and to the Wayband in the show notes too. I'm excited to be with you all for the next iteration of the product and to see where it goes next.
Yeah.
Cool. So I got a few rapid fire questions for you here before we finish up today. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, man. So let's say that you get stranded on the proverbial desert island and you can take one piece of art with you to this island, whether it is a book, a film, a Netflix series, a piece of visual art, sculpture, whatever the case is. What piece of art could you not live without?
Oh, I'd have to take some anime.
Anime, okay.
Yeah. I think that like a Naruto box set, 256 episodes, like plenty of time to kill on a desert island, and love rewatching them over and over again. So yeah. I think if I had to take a piece of art, I obviously I need a DVD player or a computer to play it on, but
and some solar powers and things like that. I'm sure you could design that pretty quickly. So second question, kind of along those same lines. If you could step into the skin of any fictional character and live one day as the life of that fictional character, who would that character be and why?
Fictional character. I'd have to say that if I could step into one fictional character, it'd probably be Magneto from the X-Men.
From the X-Men.
I guess he's not from the X-Men. He's like the enemy of the X-Men. But yeah, I think like the ability to control magnetism, and all the things that are magnetically like impacted and capable. I feel like that would be like a super fun superpower to kind of have for a day.
That is spoken like a true engineer and designer right there. Okay, and so the last question for you is, if you had the largest billboard in the world on top of the highest mountain, what would your message on that billboard be? What is your message to humanity?
It would be the best you because everyone else is taken, and buy Wayband in January.
And by Wayband in January. All right. Well, we'll make sure that we get this all posted so people can know about the Waybands in January. But Keith, thank you so much for sharing your time with me, for sharing your expertise with people like me who are going to benefit from this product, and really the idea of a haptic language, a universal haptic language. I'm so glad to be a part of WearWorks. I'm so glad to be friends with you guys, and I'm just so honored that you took the time today to come on the podcast. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and also really quickly, I just want to say thank you because you were the first person who was blind or visually impaired that I'd actually ever met. And so you gave us a lot of insight around like with the life, not just like the challenges that are obvious, but like the intimate challenges of being visually impaired. And also with all the work that you've done in healthcare, you had this wonderful platform to kind of like educate us in a way that like we still find deeply valuable. So just want to say thank you so much for all of your support for all of these years. And
Certainly.
We hope to keep you around for much longer.
Yeah, I'm excited about the future. And for another product, while you're thinking about this Kung Fu suit, look at the vast amount of injuries to the back that nurses and doctors and healthcare professionals that are at the bedside receive. See if you can figure out a haptic way to keep those people from being injured and having to retire early. That's your next mission.
Yeah, we could definitely do that. It's right in our wheelhouse.
Right in the wheelhouse. All right, Keith, thank you so much. I appreciate you being with me, and thank you, listeners, for being here for this episode of Compassion and Courage, Conversations in Healthcare. This is the podcast where I teach compassionate communication, provide perspective, and inspire resilience. Thank you, as always, for tuning in, and please be sure to hit that subscribe button, and we will see you on the next episode. Thank you all so much.
Cheers, everybody.